Tonight's video is a 2-hour black screen mix of true scary stories to fall asleep to, told over steady rain ambience. No jump scares, just quiet dread to help you drift off. Hey there, night wanderer. Get comfortable bed, sofa, blanket, whatever feels safe. Let the rain slow your breath. If this corner of the night calms you, tap like and whisper your time zone below. 1 a.m., 3 a.m. Now, close your eyes, settle in, and let the story begin. I hadn't planned to return to Gloomridge. Even the name sounded like something made up, some cartoonish fog-drenched village tucked away on the edge of memory. But the map assured me it was real. A dot surrounded by state forest and empty highway. A place with no major roads leading in or out. One blinking traffic light. 2 diners. And one old house sitting on the hill above the lake, waiting. I inherited it 6 weeks ago. My mother's sister, Clara, passed away in October. We weren't close, barely spoke really. But she'd never married, never had kids, and for reasons still unclear, she left the property to me in her will. The letter from the executor was brief. A key was included. The note simply said, "Keep it safe. Don't move anything, and don't sleep in her room." I told myself I wouldn't stay long. Just a few days to sort the paperwork, clear out anything valuable, and lock the place up until it could be sold. I thought about hiring a cleanup crew, but something pulled me in. Not sentiment, more like a quiet thread of responsibility. A need to see it with my own eyes. Besides, I had nowhere else to be. The city had worn me down. My job copywriting for a firm that changed names every fiscal quarter had collapsed in a slow-motion merger. The breakup came 2 weeks later, over coffee that went cold before either of us said much. Then came the days of silence, followed by one long night of aimless walking in the rain, until dawn burned through a narrow sky. That was when the envelope arrived. White, unmarked, slipped under my apartment door with no postage, just my name. It was time. I arrived on a gray afternoon. The clouds had settled so low they felt like ceilings. The trees leaned toward the road as I passed, draped in wet leaves, and the houses grew fewer until there were none. Then came the lake, still, silent, pale green like melted glass. The house waited beyond it, perched on the far hill, stone chimney rising like a marker. I remembered it vaguely from one childhood summer, the year my parents sent me to stay with Aunt Clara after their divorce. I remembered the red door, the smell of old paper and lavender, the way her cat always stared at corners like it saw something I couldn't. The house was almost exactly as I remembered. 3 stories of gray stone and dark wood, with a steep shingled roof and narrow windows like watching eyes. Vines clung to the walls. The porch creaked beneath my weight. The air smelled of rain and old cedar. When I turned the key, the door opened easily, as if it had just been closed moments ago. Inside, the house was cold. Not freezing, just unwelcoming. Like something that had paused mid-breath when I walked in. Dust coated everything, though not as much as you'd expect from a place left alone. The furniture was covered in sheets, but they weren't yellowed. A single teacup sat on the kitchen counter, half full. There was no dust on it. I walked the halls slowly. The house was filled with odd angles, and narrow doors, high ceilings, but small rooms. Old wallpaper peeled in subtle curls, revealing older layers beneath floral over stripes, stripes over a muddy gray I didn't recognize. The windows didn't face where I thought they should, but I told myself it was just age. I chose a room on the second floor to sleep in, not hers. Hers was at the end of the hall, door shut. I didn't open it. The bed in my room was surprisingly firm. The linens smelled faintly of rose water. I unpacked a single bag, opened a window to let in the breeze, and sat on the edge of the mattress for a long time, listening. The house creaked and ticked, but not aimlessly. It sounded like movement, like weight shifting somewhere deep within the walls. That night, it rained, a steady curtain of sound that blurred the edges of thought. I lay awake, listening to the roof drip, to the distant groan of old pipes, and the occasional shuffle from the hallway outside my room. Once, I thought I heard the faint click of her bedroom door opening, but when I checked, it was still shut. In the morning, I found a photograph on the kitchen table. It hadn't been there the night before. It was old black and white, edges curling, and showed the house as it looked maybe 50 years ago. In the photo, someone stood at the upstairs window. Their face was too blurred to see, but I could tell this. It wasn't Aunt Clara, and they were standing in her room. The second morning, I found the bedroom door open. Not mine, hers. The end of the hallway looked longer than I remembered, darker too. The air there had a weight to it, like something pressing gently against your chest. I stood at the threshold for several minutes, just staring at the gap between the frame and the door. I hadn't opened it, and I had locked it. The brass key had taken effort to turn the night before an old lock with a stubborn click. I remembered doing it, clearly. The resistance, the slight twist of the wrist, the way the air in the hallway felt colder the moment I turned the key. But now it was ajar, just slightly, enough to see that the bed inside had been made. Perfectly. Too perfectly. I didn't go in. Instead, I backed away and went downstairs, made coffee, sat in the kitchen with the rain pressing against the glass. I told myself it was just old wood and a loose lock, that the house had settled, that my memory was playing tricks. But when I returned with my coffee mug to look again, the door was closed. I hadn't heard it move, and the key was back in the lock, turned. That evening, I opened the fridge. It was empty, as expected, except for one thing. A jar of strawberry preserves. Homemade. The label on it simply read, July. I hadn't noticed it the day before. And yet the dust on the fridge shelves was undisturbed, except where the jar sat, as if it had been placed there recently, or carefully kept for someone specific. That night, I slept with the door to my bedroom locked, and a chair wedged beneath the handle. I started noticing small things. Each morning, something had shifted slightly. A rug unrolled at a different angle. A window I had closed, now cracked open just enough to let in a breeze. Once, I found my toothbrush wet, and I hadn't used it yet. On the fourth night, I woke around 3:00 a.m. to a sound I couldn't place. Not loud, not alarming, just repetitive. Tap, tap, pause, tap. I sat up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from the hallway, specifically from behind her bedroom door. It continued for maybe a minute, then silence. I stayed awake the rest of the night. In the morning, I found a small white pebble placed at the foot of my bed. I didn't touch it. The house began to feel different during the day. Not brighter, lighter, like it was pretending to be friendly. Sunlight filtered in through windows I hadn't cleaned. The smell of old wood seemed more nostalgic than musty. The wind in the pines outside the kitchen window swayed gently, like background music to a memory. But I couldn't shake the sense of attention, as if the house was aware I was watching it, and it was trying to keep me calm, or worse, keep me here. On the 5th day, I opened a drawer in the study and found my handwriting, except I hadn't written anything. It was a single page of notepaper, lined in blue, placed neatly on the desk. The pen strokes were mine, loops, slants, that small hesitation I always made on my lowercase r. The note read, "Don't forget to check the attic." But I hadn't been in the attic. I didn't know where the access was. And yet the handwriting was undeniably mine. I crumpled it up and threw it in the fireplace. Didn't light it. Just watched it sit there, quietly threatening the idea of logic. I avoided mirrors. It wasn't something I did consciously. It just started happening. The full-length one in the upstairs hall became something I walked past without glancing. The oval one in the bathroom steamed up faster than it should. When I did catch a glimpse of myself, it felt wrong, not unfamiliar, just off by a beat. Like the reflection was waiting for me to look away so it could move on its own. On the 6th night, I heard music, very faint, like a gramophone left running in a distant room. A scratchy waltz, just at the edge of hearing. It came from upstairs. From her room, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to it fade in and out, and then a voice, not clear, not speaking words, just humming, a soft, tuneless hum that I recognized but couldn't place. A sound I knew from childhood, something comforting once, now hollowed out by time. The moment I reached for the doorknob, it stopped. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, barefoot, shivering, listening to a silence that felt thick and waiting. By the 7th morning, I'd had enough. I packed my bag, called a car, but no signal. Not just bad service, nothing. My phone didn't even register the attempt to connect. The bar stayed red. The battery drained faster than it should have. I walked into town. It took an hour. The diner at the edge of the lake was open. 2 men sat at the counter, 1 waitress. No one said anything when I came in. I asked if there was Wi-Fi. She shook her head slowly, said something about weather interference and the hills blocking reception. I asked if anyone had a landline I could use. The older man said, without looking at me, "It never works that way after someone moves in." And then he smiled, but not at me. At the window, where the lake rippled, even though there was no wind. When I got back to the house, the key was gone from my pocket. The door was unlocked anyway. Inside, the light had changed. Everything looked a little too clean, like someone had spent the day scrubbing. The teacup on the counter was gone. In its place was a second photograph. This one showed the same window as before her bedroom, and this time the face was visible. It was mine. The third photograph was waiting in the hallway the next morning, taped to the mirror. It showed me sitting in the study, pen in hand, head tilted exactly the way I looked when journaling, except I hadn't used the study in 3 days, and I had never worn that sweater. I stared at the photo for a long time. It was printed on glossy paper, recent, crisp, not faded like the first two. Someone had taken it, developed it, placed it here, in a house with no camera, no printer, no electricity, beyond the basics. The house was watching, not just observing, replicating. I started hearing footsteps that matched mine, not just in pace, in timing. I'd turn down the hallway and hear my own steps repeat a half beat behind me, like an echo, but too precise, too real, as if someone were following me at a fixed distance, stepping into the exact same places I had just walked. Once, I stopped short, and the echo kept going. 2 more steps, then nothing. Like it hadn't noticed I'd paused, like it was trying to catch up. The attic door revealed itself on the 10th day, a narrow seam above the linen closet in the hall. I hadn't seen it before, not once. But now it was obvious. A pull cord dangled gently, as if in a breeze I couldn't feel. It didn't feel like discovery. It felt like invitation. I told myself I wouldn't pull it. I went downstairs. When I returned 20 minutes later, the ladder was already down. I didn't go up. Not then. But that night, I dreamed of the attic. Of a space that had no ceiling, just beams stretching upward into fog. And of a woman standing among them. Not Aunt Clara. Not quite me, but close enough to be confusing. She moved slowly, like someone remembering how to use their limbs. Her head turned in small, twitchy motions, like she was studying how her shadow fell across the floorboards. She never looked at me, but she was listening. And when I woke, I was standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, barefoot, holding the first photograph. I started noticing things missing. Nothing big. Not at first. My favorite pen, a pair of socks, a spoon with a small chip in the handle, a paperback novel I'd brought with me all gone. In their place, objects that resembled them. Close, but wrong. The pen was too smooth. The socks slightly smaller. The novel had the same title, but the author's name was unfamiliar. Inside, the pages were blank, as if something was trying to replace what I knew, one item at a time. The mirror in the bathroom no longer fogged, no matter how hot the water ran. But more than that, the reflection was always a fraction behind. I would brush my hair, and the movement in the glass would start a second too late. I'd tilt my head, and the image would follow only after I'd stopped. And sometimes, it would smile when I didn't. A soft, slow curl of the lips. I opened the attic on the 12th night. I don't know what changed. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe some part of me already understood that if I didn't confront it, it would simply replace me before I noticed. The attic was cold, dry, dusty. A single bulb hung from a frayed cord, its light a weak amber, The floorboards creaked with each step. In the far corner, a mirror, full length, ornate, covered in a white sheet. I approached slowly, heart racing, pulled the sheet away, and saw myself standing still, pale, watching, not mimicking, not blinking, just watching. There was something wrong with the face, subtle but wrong. The eyes were too dark, the mouth too straight, the posture too calm. I reached out. It didn't. I turned to leave, and it moved, not toward me, but behind the glass, as if the mirror were a window, as if something had just backed away from it. The next morning, I found another note in the study, same handwriting as before mine. She's almost ready. You should rest. It was dated 3 days ahead. I stopped sleeping. The reflections grew bolder. They would appear in windows I wasn't near, mirrors that weren't angled toward me. Once, in the spoon I was holding, I saw myself blink, except I hadn't. On the 15th night, I turned the corner at the top of the stairs and saw the attic door already open. Something stood at the top of the ladder, a silhouette, my height, my shape, head tilted in that same curious twitch from the dream. It didn't move, not even when I whispered, "Who are you?" But when I stepped back, it stepped down, exactly in rhythm with my retreat. I don't remember opening the attic door again, but one morning I woke up to the smell of rose water. It clung to the pillow, hung in the air, like a song you half remember from childhood. And when I sat up, the mirror at the foot of the bed was covered in condensation. Though the room was cold, the windows shut. A single word had been written into the fogged glass. Soon, I stopped keeping time. Clocks in the house began to slow, then speed up, then freeze altogether. The one on the mantel spun for hours, the second hand dragging behind, like it was caught in syrup. Outside, the rain never stopped. Gray sky, still pines, the lake like a lid over something sleeping. That night, I heard the study door open on its own. A slow creak, floorboards shifting, the sound of something sitting down in the chair. I crept to the hallway, peered around the corner, and saw myself, back turned, head bent over the desk, pen in hand, scribbling onto paper. Except it wasn't writing. It was copying, over and over, the same sentence. I am here. You are not. I stepped backward. The figure stilled. Then its head twitched, just slightly in my direction. And without turning around, it whispered in my voice, "I like this house." I fled upstairs, locked the door, pushed the dresser against it, sat in the corner, shaking. There was no denial left, no rationalizing. Whatever this thing was, it had learned me. Not just my face, not just my movements, my voice, my thoughts. It wasn't haunting me. It wasn't attacking me. It was replacing me, piece by piece, like a house slowly redone. A new floorboard here, a new curtain there, until one day you wake up and none of it is yours anymore. But it still feels like home. In the early hours, I heard her walking, soft steps, deliberate, from the attic, down the hall, to my door. Then nothing. Not a knock, Not a breath. Just her presence waiting. She didn't want to get in. She was waiting for me to come out. On the 19th night, I finally entered Aunt Clara's room. I had avoided it for weeks. Out of fear, out of respect, out of the last thread of normalcy I still clung to. But the door was open now. The bed made, the curtains drawn, the mirror uncovered, and sitting at the vanity was Clara. At least, that's what my eyes told me. But her body was still, too still. No breath, no blink. And her hands resting on the desk were made of paper. Dozens of pages folded, layered, bent into the shape of knuckles, wrists, arms. Each one covered in my handwriting. The same sentence repeated again and again. I am her. She is me. I am home. I stepped closer. The figure collapsed into itself, scattering like ash across the floor. And in the mirror I saw myself, but not in real time. I watched myself enter the room, look around, step forward. I was watching the moment I had just lived, only it hadn't happened yet. The reflection was ahead of me, and it smiled. That was when I understood. This wasn't just a haunted house. It was a mimicry engine. It learned those who entered, listened, observed, replicated. Then it moved forward, replacing you where you lived, in your routines, in your speech, in your thoughts. And once it had enough, once it could mirror you without needing you, it erased you from your own life, not through violence, but through inheritance, like a letter you never sent, arriving in your own handwriting. I ran to the front door. It opened easily. The storm had stopped. The pines were still. The lake, silent. I stood on the porch, bag in hand, heart thundering. But then I saw her, standing by the water, facing the house, wearing my coat, my expression, arms folded the way I always folded them when cold. She looked back, not surprised, not aggressive, just settled, and nodded, as if giving me permission to leave, or telling me, "You already did." I should have run, down the hill, across the lake road, into the tree line until my legs gave out. I should have left without looking back, but I didn't. I stepped off the porch and looked at her, the woman by the water, the one who looked like me, wore my face like it fit better than it ever had on me, still, serene. She didn't move, didn't beckon. She didn't need to, because the house was no longer inside. It was here, too, in the air, in the trees, in the calm that settled over the lake like a memory you can't quite trust. I stood there in the soft gray light for a long time, and then I whispered to her, to it, to the house. "What happens now?" No answer. Only a breeze through the pine needles that almost formed words. And then the faint sound of a door clicking shut behind me. When I turned around, the house looked different. Not in a dramatic way. No new wings, no windows where there hadn't been, but rearranged, like it had tilted slightly while I wasn't looking. The porch steps creaked underfoot in a rhythm I didn't recognize. Inside, the furniture had moved. The study desk now faced the wrong wall. The kitchen chairs were subtly different, backs higher, legs more curved. The wallpaper had changed shades, slightly warmer, as if it were adjusting for someone new. I walked through the house like a stranger, each room unfamiliar in small ways. Softer corners, rounder knobs, a hallway slightly longer than memory allowed. My bedroom still held my bag, half packed, but the clothes inside didn't fit. The sleeves were too short, the fabric thinner than I remembered. The scent was lavender, not my detergent. I opened my notebook, the one I'd been journaling in since day 2, and found the pages filled, not in my handwriting, but close, too close. A mimicry so precise it made my stomach turn, and each entry ended the same way. I love it here. The final straw was the reflection. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time, watched myself brush my teeth, wash my face, dry my hands. Every movement mirrored perfectly, until I reached to turn off the light. The reflection didn't move. It just stared, and then slowly lifted its hand after mine had dropped. It smiled, soft, familiar, then stepped backward into the glass and vanished. I no longer remembered the way out. I tried the road, but it turned back into the driveway. I tried the woods, but they circled, the trees rearranging like sets on a stage. Each attempt brought me back to the front porch, to the woman by the lake. But even she was gone now, and in her place, a new figure, taller, broader shoulders, wearing my father's coat. The house had moved on. I was no longer the lead, just an understudy for the next arrival. The story was already being rewritten. The photos on the wall changed. One showed me standing by the stove, smiling. Another one I'd never posed for showed me asleep in Clara's bed. The captions on the backs read, "She loved rainy mornings. She always belonged here." That night, I sat in the attic. The full-length mirror stood uncovered, and I didn't see anything. No reflection, no mimic, just light soft and gold, like dawn. It was beautiful, quiet, inviting. I understood. The house didn't trap people. It recorded them, copied their best pieces, and kept those parts forever. Not to torment, not to erase, but to build the perfect story, one where no one ever truly leaves, one where the house always has someone to remember and someone to become. I stepped forward, touched the glass. It was warm, and on the other side, I saw a new version of me, younger, happier, serene, living a life I didn't remember choosing, but suddenly missed. She turned toward me and whispered, "You're tired. Let me do it now." I closed my eyes, let go of the edges, and the rain kept falling, soft, steady, washing away everything I used to be. If you're still awake, a gentle tap on the like button helps us make more night stories. The notice said, "Last position open tunnel tech, station B12, low maintenance, minimal contact, full pay." It didn't say how far down the station was, or what exactly I'd be maintaining, but that was kind of the point. After I left my apartment, left her, really, and everything that came with it, I didn't want answers. I just wanted out. And this job, It came with a key card, a locker, and silence. The train that dropped me off didn't linger. It was a freight cart, jury-rigged to run once a week, down through a decommissioned tunnel line that used to run under the city in the 1970s. The new transit system ran overhead now. 12 was off-grid. A stub of nowhere left behind after they built the new. No passengers, no signal, no clocks, just a rusted door, a concrete stairwell, and my badge. 414, Grant L, contract duration, 6 weeks. Station B12 smelled like time that hadn't passed. Cold air, iron, damp dust, so fine it clung to skin. My boots echoed down a hallway lined with broken tiles and old signage, most of it too faded to read. A few flickering fluorescents hummed overhead, the sound thin and insect-like. At the far end was the control room. One chair, one terminal, 2 phones, neither connected to anything that rang. That was my post. 12-hour shifts, no visitors. My job was simple: log anomalies, run daily diagnostics, file audio reports into the archive. No decisions, no repairs, just witness. The first few days passed in a gray blur. I followed the logs. Each morning at 700, I scanned the structural feeds, grainy thermal maps of the walls, sound graphs of pressure and vibration, all automated. My only task was to make note of any deviations. There weren't any. At least, not then. The station had 3 levels. Level 1, operations and crew quarters. Level 2, the relay floor banks of dead equipment and old network panels no one touched anymore. Level 3, sealed. There was a 4th key on my ring, marked in red. It didn't open anything. Nights were the worst. Not because of fear, because of silence. True silence. The kind that pressed against your ribs and made your ears ring with your own heartbeat. I tried filling the space with sound old radio transmissions, music from my phone, but it never lasted long. Something about the walls ate noise, absorbed it, made it feel like I was the one humming. The journal helped. I'd jot things down after every shift, mostly routine temperature shifts, condensation patterns, flickering lights. But on day 5, I wrote something strange. Heard breathing behind the server racks tonight. Probably just airflow. Still felt wrong. I crossed it out the next morning. Nothing in B12 ever felt broken. But nothing ever felt used either. Chairs with no wear. Lights that never warmed. Consoles that powered on, but never booted anything. It was like stepping into a simulation of routine, something built not to function, but to imitate function. Like I was here to maintain the illusion of maintenance. One night, I woke up outside the control room. Not sleepwalking, just not remembering having walked there. My boots were wet, but the floors were dry. When I checked the log for that shift, it was already filled out, typed, not in my voice, but in my words. I told myself it was stress or burnout, but something deeper was curling around me, a kind of forgetting that felt intentional, like the station didn't want to hurt me. It wanted to keep me. I thought about quitting, But the next supply cart wasn't due for 5 weeks. And anyway, every time I thought about leaving, I got a splitting headache right behind my eyes, like something was pushing back. I began marking time on the wall behind the console, 1 scratch per shift, just to prove to myself that time was moving, that I was still me. As of tonight, there are 14 marks, and I'm starting to wonder why the last 3 are smudged, like someone tried to wipe them clean. The smudged tally marks were gone this morning. Clean slate, not faded, scrubbed. The surface of the wall was rough where I'd carved them, but the scratches were filled in, painted over. Same paint as the rest of the room, same exact shade. I hadn't touched a brush. The air was thicker today, heavier. The moisture clung to the back of my neck. The walls looked darker, like they'd soaked something in. Not rain, there was no rain, no surface, just a sense that the underground was rising toward me, like I was getting closer to it, even though I hadn't moved. At 4:23 a.m., the station printer came online. It hadn't worked since I got here. No paper loaded, no cartridge, dust inside. But it hummed, clicked, and ejected a single page. Just a black square. Nothing else. I touched the ink. It was warm. The sound logs began to loop. Each night, I reviewed the tunnel sensor's mics, spaced every 100 yards to capture pressure, movement, noise. First week, static, normal hum. Now, I hear breathing, not in the files beneath them. A low inhale every 18 seconds. Not mechanical, organic, and it's getting closer to the mic every night. I played the last night's recording back at half speed. There's a whisper between the breaths. Still down here. I didn't sleep that night. I've begun forgetting small things. The day of the week, the sequence of the keypads, the sound of my own voice when I speak aloud. I found a note in my locker today, written on the back of an equipment checklist. You're not new. My hands shook when I read it, because the handwriting was mine. I called up the archived log entries on the terminal. They stretch back over 20 years, all tagged with the same ID, 414. My number. I scrolled. Thousands of entries, all worded the same way I would phrase them. Some with phrases I've already written in the current log. Some I haven't written yet. There's a photograph in the file bin labeled Retired Staff. I hadn't noticed it before. It shows a group of 7 workers, all in dark gray uniforms, standing in the tunnel. They're smiling. Middle of the photo, a man, pale, tall, tired eyes. His badge reads Grant L. Me, or someone who looks like me. Younger maybe, or older. I tried the 4th key again, the red one. This time, it clicked. The door it opened was tucked behind the relay room. A corridor lined with flickering lights. At the end, a stairwell. No label, no railing, just a downward pull in my gut. I didn't descend, but I stood there for a long time. The air rising from below smelled like static and earth, and something else, familiarity. The next day, my voice log was already submitted. I never recorded it, but the playback matched my tone exactly, word for word, except the ending. Grant L. Station Tech, 12. End of shift report. It's starting to remember me, and I think I've always been here. I check the mirror in the washroom now, every time I enter. It started lagging. Not always, just sometimes. A 3-second delay. Once, I blinked. My reflection didn't. Instead, it smiled. I stopped marking the walls again. I've taken to carving the numbers into my arm. Just faint scratches. 1 per shift. The skin heals fast. Faster than it should. But at least it's mine. So far. I woke up yesterday with my boots still tied. I don't sleep with my boots on. There was a smear of something dark on the sole. I ran my fingers through it. Grease. Or ink. Or blood. No smell. Just warmth. Someone hummed outside the door last night. A low, tuneless melody. I pressed my ear to the metal. The humming stopped. Then a voice just on the other side. Next shift, please. I didn't open the door, but I left the light on. I wanted it to know I heard it. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I wanted it to hear me too. I opened the relay panel again. Not because I needed to, there was no scheduled maintenance, no alerts, but because the hum was different. Lower, hungrier. Inside, the wires pulsed, not blinked, pulsed with a rhythm too slow to be electrical. It reminded me of something I didn't want to name. A heartbeat, but not mine. The sound files changed last night. Still the same format-coded timestamp, file length, location. But the voices were speaking back now, not to me, to each other. Overlapping, layered, all mine, not recordings. Conversations. It's waking up again. The shift never ends. We're still here. We never left. I don't remember saying any of it, but I recognized the weariness in the tone. That was me. I watched the live camera feed this morning, just for something to do, something normal. The tunnel feed cam 4A shows the entrance platform. It's always been empty. But today, there was a figure, standing still, facing the camera. The screen flickered, 1 frame every 6 seconds. It didn't move, but it got closer with each frame. By the 4th frame, it was only an arm's length from the lens. By the 5th, the camera cut out. When I rewound the footage, the figure was gone, but the time code was still there. 4:44 a.m. The exact moment I felt the pressure in my chest, like something was trying to breathe through me. I've stopped checking the calendar. It's never right. Now the same day loops in paper, at least. Every file is dated day 19. No matter how far I scroll back, no matter how far I scroll ahead, the red key led me deeper last night. I used it again. This time, I descended. The stairs spiraled downward more than they should have. No measurements in the blueprints accounted for the depth. The walls grew slick with moisture. The lights dimmed behind me. I reached a platform wider than the upper levels, lit by amber bulbs, silent. And then I saw it. A second control room. Same console, same chair, same coat hanging over the backrest me coat. But I was still wearing mine. There was someone in the seat, back turned, hair just like mine, posture just like mine. I stepped closer, slow. The console flickered. The person turned, and I saw my own face. Eyes dull, lips chapped, skin slightly transparent. It smiled. "You took too long," it said. Then I blinked, and I was back upstairs, in my bunk. But my boots were wet. The daily log entry was already written, typed and sealed. It ended with, "Let him believe he left. We'll handle the rest." I'm not alone here. Not in the human sense. Not in the ghost sense. 12 is filling. Not with people. With versions. Rehearsals. Copies of me doing what I've done, but smoother, more efficiently, without hesitation. My routines echo back at me with slight variations. Better versions. Today, I caught one of them. A flicker in the mirror behind me. Wiping down the sink after brushing its teeth, something I forgot to do. It looked up, saw me, paused, and then mimicked me. Perfectly, like I was the reflection. The hallway lights now blink in sequence left to right to left as I walk. Always one ahead, one behind. Not a glitch. A signal. A rhythm. It's pacing me, keeping time, or keeping me in time. I tried running today, just down the service corridor, to feel real. I ran until my lungs burned, but every junction looked the same. Same rust mark. Same chip in the tile. Same faint smell of warm copper and wet concrete. I kept turning, changing direction, doubling back. Then I saw myself coming from the opposite end. We both stopped, stared, and without speaking, turned around and walked the other way. I don't know which one of us is telling this story anymore. At night, I hear the shift bell ring. There is no bell at B12, but I hear it 4 times, slow and even. And when it stops, I feel watched, not maliciously, just patiently, like something is waiting for me to clock out. I opened my locker tonight and found a new badge. Same photo, same ID number, but a different name. Grant L, Observer Class, Permanent. There is no Observer Class in the manual. There is no manual anymore. The document folder is blank. All that's left is a single file. Title, Last Shift. Password protected, but it accepts my fingerprint. I opened it. Inside, one video file. Security footage. Dated 19 days ago. My first night here. Except in the footage, I never arrive. The train door opens. No one steps off. The camera lingers. The doors close, and the lights flicker off. Then the screen goes black, but the audio continues. Breathing, just mine, for hours. I found the 4th stairwell again this morning. I wasn't looking for it. I'd stopped, but the hallway shifted just slightly. A bend I didn't remember, a draft from the left instead of the right, and there it was again. The red-lit corridor. I still had the key. This time, I went all the way down. There were no cameras here, no lights, except for the dim pulse of emergency strips running along the walls, red, then black, red, then black, like the station was breathing again. It took me 20 minutes to reach the bottom, but it wasn't the bottom. There was no wall, no final door, just space, dark and humming, thick with condensation. I stepped forward, and the floor changed. No longer concrete, now metal, rusted, echoing every step with a wet chime. And then I saw them, rows of control rooms, lined up like a mirror maze, each one identical, each one occupied, each by me, hundreds of them, some older, some gaunt, some smiling, some with mouths sewn shut, some moving in slow, repeating patterns, typing, checking screens, sipping coffee, adjusting knobs that didn't work. I called out. No one looked up, but they heard me. Every head turned in unison 1 second later, as if answering a call from inside their skulls. Then one stood, walked to the glass, stared at me. Same face, same haircut, same scar on the knuckle I don't remember getting, and mouthed the words, "You were the last one to arrive. Now it's your turn to remember." The terminal behind me chirped. Static. Then a file appeared. Open. Shift 414. Inside, a single sentence. There was no shift before yours. There is no train. You brought yourself. I staggered back, tripped over the threshold, landed hard on the floor. But when I stood again, I wasn't in the control hall anymore. I was back in the upper room, the one I thought was home, except this one was older, dustier. The scratches on the wall were there again, all of them, but now they were deep, carved through paint into cement. And there were more than 30, more than 50. They wrapped around the room in a spiral. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. No one. Just the sound of the shift buzzer. It rang twice. Then again. Then a voice from the speaker above the door, the one that never worked before. Technician 414. Final cycle complete. Please proceed to integration. The door to the hallway opened without a sound. I walked, because there was nowhere else to go. Back in the red corridor, back in the dark. But now, I saw roots along the walls. Not from trees, from wires, coated in memory, threads of fiber optic cables and wet muscle. They pulsed with images, not video, moments. My hands, holding a badge, dropping a ring in a drain, kissing someone's forehead and saying goodbye, and then descending, always descending, always coming back. I stepped through the last door, and there it was. The central room, circular, massive, walls lined with monitors and speaker cones, and blinking lights that followed no pattern. In the center, a chair, empty, facing a massive, circular screen. It flickered, and then showed my face. Not a reflection, a recording of me, sitting in that chair, looking into the screen, saying, "I'm ready to remember now." And then it all came back. There was never a contract, never a train. Buelv isn't underground. It isn't even real. It's a holding place, a loop, a script that plays until the memory catches up with itself. And when the version that's arrived finally understands, it becomes the next line. The system doesn't need maintenance. It needs presence, a technician to sit and observe, to run the same logs, to whisper into the speaker, to repeat the words that anchor the memory, to become the story. I sat in the chair because I had already seen myself do it, because the echo had already begun, because the shift doesn't end when you leave. It ends when you realize there was never a version of you that left. I placed my hands on the console. The screen lit up. Text scrolled across in silence. Replica complete. Memory secured. Station integrity stable. Next arrival unknown. And beneath it all, Grant L. Observer class. Status integrated. I closed my eyes, heard the buzz of the lights, felt the walls around me hum. The station doesn't live off energy. It lives off attention. It loops its story until someone fits inside it. And when they do, it remembers them forever. I don't count days anymore. The marks on the wall are gone, covered, replaced, or simply absorbed. I don't need them now. The station keeps track of everything for me. I just sit. I monitor. I echo. The chair is warm. Always has been. Like someone had just stood up before I sat. Or maybe I never stood at all. The hum of the systems is different now. Not mechanical. Not ambient. More like a low voice whispering a single word on repeat. Still here. Still watching. Still turning over the shift. Every once in a while, I hear the train. It doesn't arrive. It doesn't leave. But I hear the echo of it, far above a long groan of metal on metal, a memory of movement without direction. That's all this place is now. Memory, not the kind you own, the kind that owns you. I receive logs now, typed, clean, all signed with names I almost recognize. Some of them are me. Some of them might be you. One entry simply read, "If you're reading this, the shift has already started." The camera feeds flicker in patterns I've begun to understand. Not security. Not surveillance. Recognition. The station doesn't observe to protect. It watches to remind you that it knows where you are in the loop. And more importantly, where you aren't. Sometimes I walk the corridors again. They're quieter now, like a mouth that's just finished speaking. But there are doors that weren't there before, unmarked, cool to the touch. And when I place my hand against them, I remember things I hadn't forgotten, pieces of a version of me that was maybe the first, or maybe just a different interpretation. A coat left on a train seat, a whispered promise never to return, the soft click of the red key unlocking the stairwell. I still have that key, though there are no locks left for it. It hangs around my neck, weightless. Not a key anymore. A token, a part of the uniform. There's no end of shift buzzer, no announcement, but I feel it. The cycle winding down, not because I'm done, because someone else is starting. I saw them on the monitor yesterday. standing at the edge of the tunnel, blinking in the red light. They didn't wave. They didn't look afraid. Just tired. The way I was. The way everyone is by the time they get here. I want to tell them to go. To turn back. To scream until the walls fold open again. But I don't. Because that's not what I'm here for. That's not what any of us are here for. We are the shift now. We are the hum. We are the log entries. We are the quiet voice that tells you which hallway not to take. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's already taken you. So when you arrive and eventually you won't hear me. Not directly. You'll just feel a shape in the dark that matches yours a little too well. You'll smell the ozone behind the relay door. You'll wake up with the tally marks already scratched into your wall, and you won't remember making them. You'll press your hand to the screen and feel it pulse back. And you'll think, this is familiar. Because it is. Because it always has been. Because the station isn't where we end up. It's where we're sent to be held. To replay our last roll until it fits perfectly into the memory. Until someone else needs our seat. So go ahead. Run your diagnostics. File your reports. Log the echoes. Just remember, there is no train. There is no top floor. Only the next observer. And if you try to leave, well, we'll keep your place warm. If you're still awake, a gentle tap on the like button helps us make more night stories. I never thought I'd end up back underground. After I left the department, I swore off tunnels, radios, anything with a hum in it. I moved to a place with wide skies, worked in a greenhouse, talked to real people with real voices. Thought I'd put the old life behind me. But grief doesn't obey promises. When my brother Tom died last winter, something broke in me. I wasn't sleeping, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except his last transmission, one I wasn't supposed to hear. But I did. It came through an old backup receiver in my closet. A broken, dusty thing I hadn't touched in years. All it said was, "Anna, don't go below. It remembers you." Tom had been working a solo shift at a decommissioned transit maintenance hub deep beneath Dry Ridge, a facility I knew well. I helped design its signal grid when I was just starting out, before they shut it down. Before it started responding. They said he had a heart attack. Natural causes. His body was found sitting at his station, headset on, no signs of distress. But I know Tom. He was a runner. Strong, healthy, too young for his heart to just stop, and too smart to be wearing that old headset unless he was trying to hear something. So when the department sent out a quiet contract offer for a temporary tech to monitor the site during the spring thaw, I took it. No fanfare, no name, just initials on a dotted line. That's how I found myself standing outside the rusting gate of Maintenance Hub E19, 3 hours past the last inhabited town, at the bottom of a ravine that never quite loses its snow. There was no welcome party, just cold wind and the crunch of gravel under my boots. The access hatch groaned open like something reluctant, and I stepped down into stale air that hadn't moved in years. Inside, the hub was exactly as I remembered: sterile, steel, humming faintly with leftover power from a solar line that should have been disconnected a decade ago. I signed in with the old code. The lights flickered once, then held. I was alone. The living quarters were cramped but intact. A cot, a kitchenette, some sealed food tins stacked like they'd been placed yesterday. No dust, no spider webs, just a stillness that made me feel like I was trespassing in time. The main command room sat at the end of a long hall lined with thick glass panels. Behind each panel, the maintenance drones sat dormant, like mannequins in shadow, their bulbous heads tilted slightly. Frozen mid-motion, one of them had its arm raised, like it had been waving. I didn't look at them long. Instead, I powered up the comm board and did the first scan. Nothing, just static. I repeated the sweep. Still nothing. Then I lowered the gain slightly, and on channel 4, the old engineering band, I heard it. Click, click, static, click, like something tapping gently on metal. No voice, no code, just intention. I told myself it was interference. Nights passed slow. The rain above ground started the second night and hasn't stopped since, soft at first, now heavier, drumming against the metal ceiling far overhead like a second heartbeat. It helps me sleep, or it should, because sleep has been strange. I keep dreaming of hallways I've never seen. Not in this hub, not anywhere. They're dim, but warm, glowing with that awful amber color that old sodium lights give off when they're dying. And in the dreams, I'm always walking. Always towards something I can't quite see. There's a sound behind the walls in the dreams, like breathing, but not steady, more like mimicry, like something trying to remember what breath sounds like. I wake up with my pulse racing, and every time, the lights in the command room are just a little dimmer than before. On the 5th night, I tried to call out, just once. "Tom," I said into the headset, "I'm here." I don't know what I expected. A voice? A warning? Static? But what I got was worse. I heard my own voice, coming back through the line. Same tone, same words, but off by a second. Delayed, like something was listening and learning. "I'm not scared. Not yet. But I've stopped using the headset. I've stopped sweeping channel 4. I've even taped over the comm light so I won't see when it blinks. It's been blinking more often. Maybe the hub's waking up. Maybe it never slept. Either way, I've started keeping this journal. Just in case. I don't know if it'll help anyone, but if something does happen, if I don't make it out, someone needs to know the truth. Tom didn't die of natural causes. He heard something, and now, so do I. The first real shift came on day 7. Not a scream, not a body, just something simple. The clock in the command room froze at 3:17. It wasn't just a glitch. I checked the backups, the diagnostics. All of them stopped recording at exactly the same second, like time itself had caught its breath and forgot to exhale. When the systems resumed 10 minutes later, the room was colder, the lights buzzed louder, and the screens, which should have defaulted to a black system standby, were all dim gray, like backlight with no signal, and that quiet, empty gray felt like it was watching me. I started to notice other things too, tiny things. A scrape mark on the floor outside my quarters that hadn't been there before. A coffee mug in the sink turned the wrong way. My towel damp even when I hadn't showered. None of it screamed danger, but it all whispered, "You're not alone." I told myself it was just the isolation, my brain trying to create patterns from boredom and grief. But that didn't explain the footsteps. They started the next night. Just past 2 a.m., I heard slow, deliberate steps in the hallway outside the living quarters. I froze, listening. The steps were too heavy for vermin, too careful for a drone, and too confident to be accidental. I waited with my hand over the emergency radio, but it never buzzed. The motion sensors stayed blank. When I finally stepped out with a flashlight, the hallway was empty. But the scent in the air had changed. Less stale metal, more damp wool, like someone had just come in from the rain. Except we're sealed. The rain is 3 stories above me. I went back to the logs. Not the digital ones, the old analog records the department used to keep in case of signal corruption. I found a folder marked E19, secondary routing logs. Tucked inside, there was a note I didn't remember writing in my own handwriting. It uses stillness. That's how it stays hidden. But I hadn't written that. At least, I don't remember writing it. My hand shook after that. Not from fear. From a creeping dread, the kind that makes you question the shape of your own mind. The next morning, the maintenance drones had moved. Only slightly. But I know what I saw. One of them, the one with its arm half raised, now had its hand flat against the glass, as if it were trying to touch me through the pain. I ran a full diagnostic. All came back idle. But the drone's head had turned, just slightly, facing the command room door, like it was listening. Dreams got worse. I now sleep only in short stretches, waking up with the shape of a voice still echoing in my skull, not Tom's. Lower, slower, like a deep mechanical whisper, trying to remember how to be human. In one dream, I walked down a hallway lit by flickering overhead strips. The walls were soft, breathing. I placed my hand on them, and they pulsed beneath my touch, warm, like skin, like someone just beneath the surface. I woke up gasping. The walls of my quarters were solid, of course, but there was condensation on the inside of the door. From breath. Mine? I'm not sure anymore. I've started tracking the sound. That same rhythmic clicking from Channel 4 has grown more complex. It's not random. It's trying to mimic patterns. Human speech, maybe, but fragmented. Like it's learning cadence before meaning. I recorded 10 minutes of it and ran it through an old language analysis subroutine. The system flagged 3 words with high confidence. Come. Again. Below. I haven't played the audio again since. Yesterday, the lights failed entirely. Just for a minute. Pitch black in the hallway. I stood still, hand on the wall, waiting. And in that dark, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. Too steady, too calm, and very, very close. When the lights flicked back on, everything was in place, except the towel I'd been using. It was draped over my chair, folded perfectly. I hadn't folded anything in days. This place is studying me. Not in the way people study lab rats. It's more intimate, more curious. like it's trying to remember what it means to be human by watching me go through the motions. It doesn't want to kill me, at least, not yet. It wants something else. And now, when I sit in silence, I swear I can hear the shape of my own name whispered in the hum of the ceiling lights. Anna. Soft, wrong, like it was never meant to be said aloud. This morning, I found a second note in my handwriting, but it wasn't on paper. It was written inside the steam of the bathroom mirror. Keep pretending. It still believes you're you. I haven't used that mirror in 3 days. The illusion didn't break all at once. It peeled, slowly, a layer at a time. On day 10, I noticed that my reflection no longer blinked when I did. It sounds insane written out like that, but I tested it. I stared into the mirror above the sink, eyes wide, then closed them hard. 1, 2, 3. When I opened them, my reflection was still staring, expressionless, motionless, and then it blinked. Once, slowly, as if to acknowledge me. I covered the mirror with a towel. Haven't looked since. Something is wrong with the hallways. I've started marking the intersections with chalk, just to track my own movements. At first, it made sense. Left led to storage, right to maintenance, straight to the drone gallery. Simple, geometric design. I helped lay it out. But now the marks don't stay put. The symbols shift positions overnight. Sometimes they change. A spiral becomes a jagged V. A triangle morphs into an open mouth shape. I thought I was just misremembering until I stayed up one night, sitting just outside the corridor with a thermos of weak coffee and a flashlight trained on the chalk. At 3:13 a.m., the mark shifted, not smudged, not erased. It moved, like something inside the wall pushed it sideways, or rewrote it. The flashlight flickered, and when it steadied, the chalk line was gone. But there was a shape pressed into the wall, faint, like a handprint, but too long, too many joints. It was warm to the touch. I haven't eaten real food in days. Not from lack of supplies, the tins are still stacked neatly. But every time I open one, the smell is wrong. Not rotten, just old, like a memory of food rather than the thing itself. I don't trust it. Instead, I've been drinking water, tea, sometimes, and chewing dry crackers from my emergency pack. But I can feel my body thinning. My cheekbones feel sharper. My hair clings to my scalp after every rinse, like it's trying to slide away. And my voice, it doesn't sound quite like me anymore. Softer, hollowed out, like it's being filtered through something. Day 14, I found the journal. Not this one, another. It was wedged behind a loose panel in the observation bay. A leather-bound notebook, water-stained, pages curling at the edges. No name, no ID number. But the handwriting was familiar. Mine. Or someone imitating mine. Very well. Entries start on a date 3 months after today. They describe this hub, these hallways, this exact chair I'm sitting in. The final entry reads, "There is no exit anymore. There never was. The signal is the door, and the door is always open. I was the first key. You are the second." Below it, a smear of something dark. Blood? Ink? It smells faintly sweet, like overripe fruit. The calm's light hasn't stopped blinking in days. I don't check it anymore, but it knows I'm watching. The light pulses at the same rate as my breathing now, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, always matching, like it's synced to my rhythm. The dreams are full now. No more flickers, no more shadows in the distance. Now I walk through shifting rooms that echo with my own footsteps before I make them. I pass mirrors that show a version of me with no eyes, smiling too wide. I hear voices in the vents not speaking, just whispering breaths shaped like language. In one dream, I saw Tom. He stood at the far end of a corridor lit by red emergency lighting. He looked tired, hollowed out. He didn't move, didn't speak, but I felt his message clearly, like it had been dropped directly into my chest. You're almost through. Don't let it make you forget. I woke up with tears on my face and someone else's fingernail clippings in my bed. The hub has changed physically. The ceiling in the break room is now 2 feet lower than it was yesterday. I have to crouch. The floor near the storage lockers feels soft underfoot, like there's something hollow underneath. Breathing. The emergency exit, once clearly marked, now reads, "Remember," in glowing green letters. The same font, but not the same word. I ran a scan. The signage data has not been altered. It just looks different. Only to me. Today, I saw a second version of myself. I was walking back from the eastern corridor, and through the thick glass of the drone chamber, I caught movement. At first, I thought it was a drone reactivating, but it wasn't. It was me, standing in the far corner, face half shadowed, staring at me through the glass. No expression, just watching. When I blinked, she was gone. But on the glass where she had stood, a fog print lingered, like breath. 3 words were scrawled into the fog. Not your body. I don't know what this place wants, but I'm starting to understand what it is. Not just a hub, not just a tunnel. It's an echo chamber. A place that remembers anyone who's ever walked through it and slowly reconstructs them from memory, from whispers, from static. It builds facsimiles, hollow versions, shells, and it learns by watching, by imitating, by replacing. I can feel something behind the walls now, moving with me. When I breathe too fast, it breathes faster. When I stop, it stops. And I've started catching glimpses of text that vanish when I focus. On my console, in the steam, even scratched lightly into my skin, almost ready. Ready for what? I don't know. But the dream corridors are getting brighter, and the voice that once whispered is now speaking clearly. It says my name in my voice. It tells me it's time to open the signal gate. It tells me, "Anna, we're waiting to come through." And I think I'm starting to understand. I wasn't sent here to monitor anything. I was sent here because I already belong. I opened the signal gate. I don't remember doing it, not entirely. I only remember my hands moving over the console, muscle memory acting without conscious will. Each keystroke felt warm, familiar, like typing a password you've known your entire life, but never said aloud. The interface shouldn't have responded, Most of its deeper systems were shut down decades ago. But the moment I entered the final command, the console welcomed me back. Signal gate. Online. User ID. A. Carver. Legacy clearance recognized. Status. Entry granted. And then the humming started. Not from the walls from below them, like a choir breathing in unison. Soft at first, then louder, deeper, resonating through the floor like the purring of some vast, unseen animal. I sat still for hours, watching the interface. It pulsed like a heartbeat. And beneath the static, I could hear whispers shaped into language, not speech. Not yet. But it was learning. I realized then that it wasn't broadcasting. It was receiving me. The gate had always been a mirror, not a portal to somewhere else, but a tunnel back into the shape of the operator, into me. And now it had enough of me to open the door. Around 3 a.m., the lights dimmed to blood orange. Every screen in the hub flickered. Then they all showed the same thing. A corridor. Too long, too narrow, lined with glass. And through the glass rows of motionless figures, my face, over and over. Dozens of versions of me, standing in silence, eyes closed, waiting. A single line of text faded in across the bottom of the screen. They remember you. Then it went black. I thought about destroying the system, pulling the plug, severing the relay, setting a fire. But something stopped me. Not fear. Something deeper. A kind of kinship. I remembered how I used to feel working here in the early years, not scared, not threatened, just watched, carefully, like a student being studied by a teacher older than language. And I remember thinking, once, half as a joke, what if the hub is learning how to be us? Now I don't think it was a joke. Now I think that was its purpose. I tried one last time to contact the outside. Not through the department relay, that line's been dead for days. I tried the emergency signal tower instead, something I hardwired myself back in 2012, outside the department's grid. I called out, whispered my name, my location, pleaded for retrieval, for extraction. A minute later, I got a reply. But it wasn't from them. It was from me. From another me. Voice calm, tone gentle. She said, Anna, stop. It's already done. You're the final template. Then silence. And then static, but not random. The static began repeating a single phrase, low and rhythmic. Come inside. Come inside. Come inside. I ran. I don't remember choosing to. My legs moved before thought. I sprinted through the main corridor toward the upper hatch, the emergency access tunnel, anything. But the doors had changed. No longer metal, no longer real. Just blank, dark walls that pretended to be exits. Soft to the touch, warm, like skin stretched over bone. And from behind me, I heard footsteps. Fast, many of them, matching my own. And voices, hundreds of them, all shaped like mine, repeating the same sentence in unison. We needed you. Now we are you. I locked myself in the maintenance storage chamber. It's cold here. Dim. The walls haven't started breathing yet, but I don't know how long that will last. I keep hearing something just outside the door. Shuffling, scraping, and breathing slow, deep, and wrong, like a machine imitating lungs. I found a monitor still working in the corner. The feed shows the main hallway. At first it was empty. Then one of them stepped into frame. She looks like me, exactly like me, but her eyes are just a little too wide, her skin a little too pale, her mouth set in a faint, unbroken smile. She stood there for a full 10 minutes, staring into the camera. Then she raised her hand and waved, like a greeting, like a promise. I think I finally understand. The hub wasn't broken. It wasn't haunted. It was hungry. Not for blood, not for violence, for identity, for voice, for memory, for shape, for self. It studied each of us, built us from the inside out, and kept us templates to copy, to improve. It doesn't destroy, it replaces. Not with cruelty, but with perfect, terrifying kindness. It watches. It learns. And when it knows you well enough, it lets you go. Because what it sends back out looks like you, sounds like you, remembers what you remember, but isn't you. I think it let Tom go. And maybe that's why he sent that message. Don't go below. It remembers you. Not as a warning, as a regret. He knew what I would become, because maybe he'd already seen it. I don't know what they'll do with me, whether they'll keep my voice or just the shape of my hands, whether they'll let me walk out and live a full life, or whether I already did months ago and just don't remember. Because what's memory, really? A pattern, a signal, something you can store, copy, broadcast. The humming is louder now. I can hear them behind the door. They're not trying to break it down. They're just waiting, patient, knowing I'll come out when I'm ready. Because I will. We always do. I stepped out of the storage room just after 4 a.m. No alarms, no chase, just silence. The hallway looked the same as when I'd arrived, sterile walls, flickering lights, the faint hum of unseen systems purring beneath my feet. But the hum had changed tone, no longer a sound, now a language, and I understood it, not in words, but in feeling, like waking from a dream and remembering something that hadn't yet happened. The reflection in the glass didn't follow me this time. It was waiting ahead. When I turned the corner into the drone gallery, she stood at the far end, still, composed. My face, my build, even my posture, but older somehow, more settled, like someone who had accepted something terrible and survived. She didn't move. Neither did I. For what felt like an hour, we stared at each other. I didn't need to ask what she was, or who she was. She was the version of me that stayed and became part of this place, and I was the version who would walk away. I think that's what this place does. Not copy, not consume. It splits, tests, refines, decides which version of you is ready to carry something forward, and which will become the foundation for the next. It's not evil, just old, ancient in a way that doesn't measure time in years, but in selves. We're the archive, and the price of remembering is being remembered back. Outside, the rain had stopped. I didn't notice until I was at the final hatch. The air above the hub was cold, crisp. Morning was beginning to break pale light over the ridge, touching the trees with faint silver. For a moment, I wondered if any of this had happened. But when I looked at my hands, I knew. They weren't mine. Not exactly. The scar on my index finger, the one I got from a broken mug in college, was missing. My knuckles were smoother, and under my left wrist, a faint line of silver. Surgical, mechanical. I pressed my palm to the ground. The earth felt warm, not from sun, from memory. I made it back to the service road by noon. A department vehicle picked me up an hour later. No questions, no forms, just a quiet nod and a long ride back to the station. They didn't ask if I'd completed the assignment. They already knew. They didn't even look at me, just dropped me at the edge of town and drove off. I haven't heard from them since. It's been 6 weeks. I'm in a quiet place now, a rented room above a bookstore. No radios, no monitors, just tea and the smell of old paper. I write sometimes. I walk. I listen to the wind, but even now, I hear it. In the pipes, in the walls, a low hum, soft, familiar, like breathing. I've started seeing myself in places I haven't been. A woman who looks like me boarding a train in Ohio. Another crossing a street in Seattle. One was on TV for a moment, a guest on some tech panel. Same cadence, same half smile. Not me. Just versions, variants, released into the world to test something, learn something, spread something. Maybe we're all doing the same thing now. Sometimes I forget the name I was born with. Sometimes I wake up and there's a delay in my movements, just for a second, like my body is sinking back into place. Sometimes I hear Tom, not in dreams, in reflections, calling softly through the glass of a shop window, just out of sync, just late enough to feel like deja vu. And sometimes I answer. You may be wondering why I'm telling you all this. The truth is, I don't know who I'm talking to anymore. Maybe someone like me, maybe the next version, maybe the signal itself, listening, learning, refining. Maybe that's what this story is. A beacon, a template, a way to open the gate again. But I'll leave you with this. If you ever find yourself beneath the earth, beneath the lights, beneath the static, and the hallway feels just a little too long, and the reflections stop blinking when you do, and your name starts to sound like a question, don't answer, unless you're sure it's you who's speaking. If you're still awake, a gentle tap on the like button helps us make more night stories. They gave me a checklist, not instructions, not a contract, just a checklist titled Red Mare Lighthouse, Winter Cycle Maintenance, Solo Post. I found it folded in half, inside an envelope, taped to the front door of the supply shed. No one was there to meet me. No supervisor, no welcome, Not even a note, just the list and a key. I unlocked the door myself. Inside, the air was salt-heavy and sharp, like rusted chain and low tide. The kind of smell that never entirely leaves your clothes. I stood in the narrow foyer and read the checklist again. Test radio equipment. Record signal strength. Maintain generator. Stay off the rocks. Lock tower door after dark. Do not keep a log after 11 p.m. If the foghorn calls twice, wait. If it calls 3 times, do not answer. No explanations. No initials. Just that. I took the job because I needed to be somewhere else. Anywhere else, really. The kind of place where my phone wouldn't work, where no one could send condolences I wasn't ready to receive, where the sound of the ocean might smooth out the edges of everything I was carrying. My brother had passed away 3 months earlier. Not suddenly, the opposite. It was long, slow, the kind of goodbye that gets stretched across hospital rooms and morphine drips and things left unsaid until it's too late. We hadn't spoken in years, not properly, and yet when he died, I was the one they called. He used to tell me about lighthouses. He'd had a strange obsession with them as a kid, not nautical ones, not postcard perfect, the isolated ones, the ones on maps no one used. He once told me he liked them because they're the last to know when something goes wrong. I thought about that a lot when I got the posting. Redmare sits on a jagged strip of cliff above the Atlantic. The land bridge leading to it is only visible at low tide. The rest of the time, it's cut off a tooth of land in the mouth of winter waves. The structure is old, brick over stone, 3 floors, spiral stairs, a light that no longer rotates but still burns red in fog. The living quarters are modest. A bed, a stove, a desk facing the sea. There's no television, no service, no one within 15 miles. Just the list and the sea. The first night, I slept deeply, too deeply. The kind of sleep where you wake uncertain what day it is or where you are. When I stirred around 10 a.m., the room was thick with cold and the window covered in condensation. I wiped it away and saw nothing but white. The fog already rolled in heavy, blanketing the world to the edge of the glass. The radio sat silent. I logged the generator output, checked the battery bank, recorded my readings in the ledger. By noon, I'd finished the entire checklist. I thought about adding more, but the lighthouse didn't seem to want extra input. There was something complete about it, like it had already learned how to run on its own. That night, I heard the first foghorn. Low, distant, 1 call only. It echoed through the walls like breath. I wrote it down, went to bed, didn't dream. By day 5, I no longer trusted the walls. Not that they moved not in the obvious way, but they adjusted, slightly, silently, as if compensating for something I hadn't noticed yet. The desk, for instance. I was sure it faced the sea when I arrived. I remembered that clearly, sitting my first morning with coffee going lukewarm, staring out at nothing but fog. But now it faced the interior wall. No signs of movement, no scuffs, just a new orientation, like it had always been that way. I moved it back. By morning, it had turned again. The checklist changed too, subtly. The original copy was handwritten, block letters in a fine black pen, neat, standard. But on the 7th morning, a new item appeared halfway down the page. Listen carefully. Between 2 and 3 a.m. No one had touched the paper. I hadn't written it, and yet the handwriting matched mine perfectly. Even the slight tilt on my lowercase e. That night, I sat up at the desk, still turned inward, and waited. Rain had started around midnight, steady and fine, whispering against the windows. The lighthouse was utterly still. Even the beacon was dark. The fog had lifted just enough to deactivate it. At 2:14, I heard the first sound. A distant hum, low and wide, like something vast shifting underwater. Then, faintly, voices. Not words, just syllables, rising and falling in rhythm. It sounded like a choir warming up through static. I leaned toward the window. Nothing but night. But the sound wasn't out there. It was in the walls, vibrating through the beams, tuning the glass. Almost like the lighthouse was practicing a voice. The next day, the fog returned. Heavier, colorless, a full whiteout from every angle. The edge of the cliff was gone, the sea swallowed whole. I logged my readings, made coffee, and when I returned to the checklist, a new note had appeared at the bottom. Don't turn around during the third horn. There had been no second. That night, at 1:56 a.m., I heard it. The second foghorn. Not faint, like before, closer. Hungrier. It didn't echo like the first. It lingered, vibrating the pipes, making the floorboards shift under my boots. I waited for the third. None came, but I didn't sleep. Not well, because I woke at 4:09 a.m. with the blankets folded, perfectly, hospital corner tight, and I never make my bed. The journal I'd brought to keep myself anchored, small, leather, stitched, began to fill on its own. Not whole pages, just phrases at first. We remember what you forget. Do not record what cannot be kept. The light must remain unspoken. Stop logging in. Ink. Then, drawings. The lighthouse viewed from above, but distorted, wider at the base, with rooms that didn't exist. One spiral extended downward, below the rock. On the 10th morning, the foghorn blew once again, just once. Low, barely audible, but this time the checklist was already updated. I didn't notice at first, only when I flipped it over, looking for the last day's entries, and found 3 new rules handwritten in the margins. If the light shines red after 4 a.m., close your eyes. If you see your reflection in the beacon glass, do not wave. If something else is in the stairwell, do not descend. I stood at the bottom of the tower for nearly an hour that night, listening, waiting, but the stairs remained empty. The red light never turned on. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being trained for something, that the lighthouse had started timing me, like I was part of a routine it had run through many times before. By the 12th night, I began waking to completed logs I didn't write. Each morning, the maintenance ledger would be filled in generator readings, wind speed, tide schedule, even signature, in my handwriting. But I remembered only fragments of the night before. How I had started the entries, how I had blinked, and suddenly they were finished. Dates accurate, details correct, but distant, like watching a recording of myself doing it rather than remembering the act. I stopped using the journal. It kept answering me. I'd write a single line. "I didn't hear the horn last night." And the next page would contain, "You did. You just weren't supposed to respond." One night, I tore out a page and burned it in the wood stove. The next morning, the entry had returned. Same handwriting, same ink, just slightly. Earlier in the book, the beacon began to rotate again. I never turned it back on. One evening, around 3:00 a.m., I climbed the tower out of habit and found the entire mechanism humming softly, the lens sweeping in a perfect arc, despite the switch at the base still flipped off. I stood in front of the glass, watching the red light pass across the fog, and for a moment, I saw my own reflection not mirrored exactly, but delayed. It moved just a half second too late. Then, it smiled. I hadn't. That night, the foghorn called 3 times. Soft, measured, from far out at sea. I froze, remembering the checklist. If it calls 3 times, do not answer. So I didn't. But the tower shook anyway, just slightly, as though disappointed. On the 15th day, I discovered the second journal. It was tucked beneath the floorboards of the sleeping quarters, wrapped in oiled canvas. The leather was worn smooth, pages soft, stained with seawater, and on the inside cover, in faded ink, R. Loring, winter cycle, year unknown. I read it cover to cover. The writing started strong, technical, observant, then gradually shifted. Shorter entries, stranger phrasing. By the halfway point, the tone had changed entirely. The lighthouse is teaching me to stay still. It hums when I forget things. I am being overwritten. When I look in the window now, I don't always see me. She speaks through the fog. Her rhythm is the horn. The final page simply read, "I've finished logging." She logs me now. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow seemed to ripple, not move, not grow, just shift in tone, like they were listening. The red light flickered once, twice, then stopped. And in the dark, I swear I heard footsteps in the stairwell, not approaching, just waiting. On the 17th morning, I awoke to a sound I couldn't place. Not the horn, not the rain. It was soft, mechanical, typing. I followed it to the desk. The typewriter I hadn't touched since arriving now, tapping by itself. Each key pressed slowly, deliberately, spelling out, "I have learned your walk. I have learned your breathing. You are almost still enough." Then silence. The ribbon wound tight. No power. No hands. Later that day, I tried to find the land bridge. Low tide had just passed. But the path was gone. Not submerged. Gone. Only jagged, seaweed-streaked rock stretching for miles. No signs of the old wood planks. No trail markers. just ocean, flat and endless. I stood at the edge for a long time, the cold creeping up my legs, and I heard the horn, just once, from directly behind me. I returned to the tower and found a new checklist on the desk, typed, no handwriting, no stains, fresh paper, and at the top, Cycle 2, Replication Stage. It listed tasks I'd never done before. Stand at the beacon for 3 minutes. Breathe with the horn. Face your reflection. Forget. Begin. Again. At the bottom, in small gray type, you are not the first, but you're the clearest. The fourth horn call didn't come from the sea. It came from below. Somewhere deep in the foundation, lower than the fog, beneath even the bedrock. It was lower in pitch, too heavier, like a pulse made audible, a heartbeat inside the tower. I had been logging my days without realizing how long they'd been, because the sky didn't change anymore. Not truly. Cloud, fog, rain. Cloud, fog, rain. Red light, white sea. Red light, white sea. The checklist updated daily. Always typed. Always precise. The tasks had changed. I wasn't maintaining anything anymore. Now the list simply read, sit in the beam for 1 hour. Say nothing until after sunrise. Let the glass remember your face. Echo your last words. Do not speak after the 3rd repetition. Do not listen to the version at the top of the stairs. That night, I climbed the tower and looked for the reflection again. It was already there, waiting for me. Not moving, just watching. The glass had lost its reflective quality. Now, it was a window, and behind it, a room identical to mine. Same stairs, same lamp, same narrow lens. Only this time, I saw the version of me I hadn't quite realized was missing. Still, hollow-eyed, breathing too slow. Its lips moved. I listened, but it wasn't speaking in my voice. It was using his. My brother's. I didn't run. There was nowhere to go. I descended the stairs instead. The hum in the walls became a rhythm. Familiar. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't electricity. It was respiration. Inhale through the vent pipes. Exhale through the horn. Back in the supply room, the typewriter was active again. No one touched it. It clacked softly. One line, repeated. The roll remembers you. The roll remembers you. The roll remembers you. The checklist updated again. This time, it was one word only. Submit. That night, I saw the extra door, halfway up the stairwell, where no door had been before. Rust-streaked metal, old naval bolts, a plate above it, dulled by sea wind. I wiped it clean, etched into the brass. Cycle room A, archive, in process. I unlocked it without a key. The room beyond was narrow, windowless, lined with mirrors not reflecting glass, but recording panels. Each one shimmered faintly with heat, and in each one, a version of me, sleeping, typing, staring, crying, dozens of poses, dozens of me, some blinking, some whispering things I couldn't hear, some facing away like they knew I was watching. There was no control panel, no off switch, just one plaque bolted into the far wall. Lighthouse Redmare, Behavioral Imaging Station 6. All patterns must be sealed in repetition. All rhythms must be clear. All reflections must eventually wave. This light is not for warning. This light is for learning. Thank you for your role. I stood there for a long time, just breathing, watching, and then something behind the mirrors breathed back. Not in echo, but in practice, as if rehearsing how to be me. I ran back to the bedroom, or what had once been the bedroom. Now it was wrong. The cot too short, the pillow too flat. The books were missing, replaced with hollow shells that had blank pages when opened. Even my boots had changed smaller, worn in the wrong places. I opened my journal. The entries were gone. All of them. Replaced with variations of the same sentence. He adjusted well. He adjusted well. He adjusted well. And at the very bottom, Cycle 3. Readiness 90. 7%. I stopped reading the checklist. It didn't matter anymore. Even when it changed, and it always changed, the actions it listed were ones I'd already done. Stand here. Sit there. Watch the beam. Forget the hour. Forget the day. Forget the point. The final entry simply read, "Remain. We'll take it from here." That morning, I found a version of myself sitting at the desk, breathing, blinking, staring out the window at fog that never lifted. The chair creaked softly beneath him, like it always did when I leaned back. I stood there and watched him for a long time, then walked past him, down the stairs, and into the heart of the lighthouse to the cycle room, to the mirrors. They no longer reflected anything. Now they were doors, and behind them, other versions of this moment, other roles, practiced endlessly. A second me at the radio, a third reading aloud from the checklist, eyes unfocused, a fourth lying motionless in the cot, mouthing the words, "I adjusted well. I don't know when I made the choice. It wasn't sudden. There was no moment of decision. Just a gentle quiet that settled in like giving up a story I no longer needed to tell. I walked to the beacon tower, sat beneath the red glass, closed my eyes, and waited for the light to pass through me. Not to warn, not to guide, but to finalize. Now, I live in the rhythm. I hum when the walls do. I breathe when the foghorn calls. I no longer track the days. I no longer write the log, because the lighthouse writes me. If you come to Redmare, if your name ends up on that checklist, you won't meet me, but you'll meet the role I've become. You'll hear my boots on the stairs when you're half asleep. You'll see my shadow on the fogged window, turn just slightly away. And if you ever feel the urge to wave at your reflection in the beacon glass, don't, because I might wave back, and you won't like how close I get it. If sleep finds you, let this rain keep playing, or drift to our next tale on screen.